My name is Risa Goluboff, and my book is called Vagrant Nation: Police Power, Constitutional Change, and the Making of the 1960s. My book is about the legal history of the 1960s as seen through the lens of this little-known kind of criminal law called vagrancy laws. The regime of vagrancy laws came to the United States, to the colonies actually, from medieval and Elizabethan England and proliferated all across the United States, and they're used for hundreds of years to regulate, arrest, surveil, control all kinds of people who didn't fit in lots of different ways. And in the 1960s, those laws are challenged by all those people who didn't fit in, who now have social movements and lawyers and increasingly good legal arguments. And by the early 1970s, the laws fall apart. Vagrancy laws were status crimes. Most of the time in the United States, when you do an act, you commit a crime, you get convicted of having done that act. So you steal something, you get convicted of theft or of robbery. But vagrancy laws made you a vagrant. If you were a dissolute person, you were a vagrant. And you didn't actually have to commit any particular act in order to be arrested and convicted for vagrancy. You had to be a certain kind of person. And there was an enormous discretion in the eyes of the police as to whether and who a particular person was, whether a particular person was a vagrant and who counted in that category. So during the 1960s, hippies were suddenly arrested as vagrants. In the 1950s, it was beats who were arrested. Civil rights activists were arrested, Vietnam War protesters. So whoever was threatening to the status quo, whoever was a misfit who didn't fit in, whether it was because they were a racial minority or they were poor or they were a political dissident or a nonconformist culturally, they were seen as a vagrant, and there was always a possibility for arresting them under vagrancy laws. I think this is a story that's always going to be relevant because there's always going to be a tension between how much power the police have and how much liberty individuals have, and that's a boundary line that's always going to shift. It's a boundary line that's always going to be in conflict, and people are always going to be contending over. And this is a story about one instantiation of that boundary line and one battle over it. And I think wherever we stand in relation to that boundary and whatever moment we're in, this is a story that will have something to say, but that something might change depending on the moment that you look at it from.